Hello, listeners. If you haven't liked, subscribed, or followed the Sounds of Living podcast accounts, you could find us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and Patreon at Sounds of Living Podcast. Any donation would be greatly appreciated to help support my journey of taking Sounds of Living around the United States. Thank you. Hello and welcome back to Sounds of Living. I'm here with my old roommate, Jacob Murieta-Smith. Jake, say what's up.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing, man?
Pretty good. Fun night out last night, but excited for this right now.
Yeah. Jake, why don't you tell everybody how we met?
Back in college, sophomore year after COVID, we both got an apartment, like just completely random roommates, but we just clicked instantly. And then we found out later, freshman year, we were in the exact same dorm. We probably walked past each other like a million times, just didn't know each other. Probably just fate that we were going to be friends.
Oh, yeah. I completely agree with you. It's strange how life kind of gives you these scenarios where you meet people and you get to decide whether you want to have them in your life or not. And we got lucky enough to spend 3 years together in the same apartment and live in the same freshman dorm without even knowing each other. Jake, why don't you tell us about yourself, who you are, what you're about?
Right now, I work at a courthouse. I'm a record specialist. I just pull files, but I'm hoping to transfer to IT soon. My entire degree was databases, cybersecurity, that kind of stuff. I was an MIS major, management information systems. I like to think of it like half computer science, half business side of stuff. So I'm hoping to get back into it like later on, start my master's someday. Before college, I had no idea what path I was going to be on. Once I started thinking about it, really influenced by the music I was listening to.
For your first pivotal point, you talked about growing up and listening to The Wall by Pink Floyd. Tell me more about what reminded you of that album, like what experience?
When I was younger, well, my dad's always been like a big Pink Floyd fan, and he would be playing it constantly when I was like, whenever I would go over to his apartment. But his favorite was always The Wall. That was the first album that he got when he was a kid. Whenever I would go over, he would be playing it a lot. It would just be like either we were cleaning or just like hanging out, doing anything, and like it would just be on in the background. But the one song that like I really remember is Mother. It's like, Mother, do you think they'll drop the bomb? The tone of it is really soothing, and I remember it being really relaxing as a kid. It was just comforting listening to it in the background. But then later on, like you listen to the entire album, recontextualize it, and you realize that the soothing tone of it is supposed to be like a facade. His mom building the first brick in the whole wall, shutting him off from the rest of society, I guess. Completely misunderstood the song as a kid.
Were there other songs off the album besides Mother that you enjoyed that you'll listen to on the daily, or is it just like the album as a whole?
I love listening to it like just all the way through. It's probably the only album that I have permanently downloaded on my phone because I'll just listen to it from beginning to end, repeat it over and over again. But I mean, it's literally the most popular song from the album, but Another Brick in the Wall Part 2. Everybody loves it, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if I heard this, if my dad told it to me or something, but Dark Side of the Moon is the best album of all time, but it's not even the best Pink Floyd album. The Wall is the best Pink Floyd album of all time. It's amazing. It just has so much meaning. Like some people say that it's like the first concept album. It's just perfect all the way through.
Tell me why you think The Wall is a better album than Dark Side of the Moon.
So part of it... This is kind of dumb, but one time I was going to sleep and I was listening to Dark Side of the Moon, and then time came on, and then there was just all the alarm sounds, and I just shot up out of my bed. So that's part of it. But I mean, I feel like The Wall, just no matter what time you listen to it in your life, you just find new meaning in it. Every song just has a different context that you can view it through. Like it's all about somebody like isolating themselves from society through their own actions. Like it started because of circumstances that they were in, but then at the end he realizes who he is and all of that. But it's still a cycle. The end of the last song ties into the first song. He starts like a sentence at the end and then he ends at the beginning. So it's completely meaningless if you only listen to it once. But once you like loop it through, it all makes sense. So I feel like no matter when you listen to it, it just has a different meaning. Versus Dark Side of the Moon, all the individual songs like have really good meaning. I think I saw once that when you're a young adult, you really relate to Dark Side of the Moon. Like you start viewing different aspects of society and like what's kind of like wrong, like time and money, both of them, they're super important whether you like it or not. It's true, but I feel like it's very mid-surface level. Not mid, Dark Side of the Moon. It's still a really good album, I want to say. But The Wall just has so much more meaning beyond anything else.
So what you're saying is that for Dark Side of the Moon, it's easier to conceptualize because of the topics that they talk about. It's more general and everybody understands it at a younger age.
Yeah.
But when you are listening to The Wall, it's more complicated and pertains to certain aspects of your life that you would have to experience in order to really understand what they're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. As you get more life experience, so much more starts opening up in The Wall. Yeah, you start like knocking down your own bricks and you realize different aspects of the wall that you built for yourself, and it just fits perfectly.
I've listened to The Wall and Dark Side of the Moon, but I've never really paid attention to all those intricate details that you have mentioned. It's fascinating. I really want to check it out again and try to see if I can find all those things that you're talking about, especially in Mother too. Like, I love Mother. Great song. For the second point, it was more of a comedic reason or thing that you are reminded of with the Beatles song Come Together. Can you tell me more about why you chose that song?
So freshman year of college, we just had the really basic channels like in the dorms. You couldn't get like cable or whatever. So you just had like the 5 channels. One of them was like a student channel too. But there was one commercial that would come up all the time. I think it was for Amazon Prime or Prime Music or something like that. And it was Come Together by the Beatles. And it played every 5 minutes, I swear. So my friend, my old roommate and I, we would just make fun of it. It just got to a point where we started liking it ironically, and then liking it ironically turned it into like genuinely liking it. I feel like it's kind of a joke, but before that, I would hear music, right? Like it would be something that was just around me. But I feel like that moment is when I started to like really listen to music, because that got me into the Beatles. Everybody loves the Beatles, right? Even if you like hate them, you love to hate them, right? Once I started to get into the Beatles, I started being like, who are the bands that were like influenced by them? I mean, everybody, right? But like, who were immediately influenced by them? And then started listening to that. And then I kind of unconsciously started like listening to music by the decades, right? Like I started with the Beatles, and then I went to like the Who, and then started moving my way forward by the decade. My repertoire, I guess, has just expanded so much. I'm constantly finding new music that I'm experiencing, I'm listening to. I'm not just hearing it, right? And it's not just passive listening, it's active listening.
It's funny how something that can be funny at first ends up being something that opens you to a completely different world that you weren't exposed to or didn't understand as much when you were younger that you do now. It led to all this other music that you now love and listen to all the time. So that, I would say, that is a pretty pivotal point, even though it's like, it's a funny way of it happening, especially with a TV commercial, but that's really cool.
Definitely. I still think about that commercial a lot. It's dumb, but it plays constantly in my head. Like I said, every 5 minutes it was on TV, and it's still in my head.
That's so funny. And we have one more thing that we want to discuss, and that is one of my favorite bands, Journey, and their song Separate Ways. How did that song affect you, and like what exactly spoke to you about it? Because it's interesting that you had picked it, because in my intro episode, that's the song that got me into Journey in the first place. So what was it that inspired you about that song that made you want to listen to it and go wherever you're going to go with this?
Yeah, so you recommended me this song when I was going through a really tough time. I don't know, I wouldn't even say it was like a real breakup, but it was like the first time I was like actually dating somebody, and then it ended. I was really down, could not get over it. And then I think I was telling you about it in the car, going into more detail, and you were like, oh my god, this is exactly like Separate Ways by Journey. And I was like, what? And you were like, I think you stopped the car, you pulled over, you put it on your phone, and then like we were just listening to it all the way to the grocery store. And I was like, oh my god, it really is. But the whole song, if I remember it right, is like this guy obsessing over a girl that they just met like a couple times, or maybe just once, and they go their separate ways, and he just can't get over her. And the entire song, he's obsessing over her. If anything happens, I'll be there for you. And then at the end, depending on which version you listen to, I think there's a radio version that has this one part cut out, and it changes the entire meaning of the song. Versus if he listens to the full version, he realizes that he's wrong, that he can't just be stuck on the past. And I feel like that's a perfect example of this, because you can recontextualize the past completely. When I was talking earlier about not knowing what major I was going to pick, or like where I'm going to go in life and whatever, the future is always a mystery because you don't know what's going to happen. But people feel like the past is like completely set in stone, but it's not. You can recontextualize all those moments. You can listen to The Wall again and then see all these things that you never realized before, and everything that you thought was true of the past can be completely different from what you initially thought. So just having a little bit more context can change everything. You realize that you were wrong. You realize that things can be different, and you can move forward. You don't have to be stuck in the past. So even though it was just, I don't know, a kind of meaningless breakup, it had a huge influence and kind of like how I think of life now.
How come you think that your breakup was meaningless?
Because, I mean, we were only talking for like a few months. We were dating a little bit. We went on a few dates, but grand scheme of things, it wasn't a lot.
But it was a lot because it was something that you felt deeply, at least, and you hadn't had any previous relationships before it, right? So it is a lot to cope and understand when you don't really have the experience to relate it to. It makes sense on why it was a significant moment. I don't think you should ever think it's not important or meaningless because you got a whole song that changed your perspective on things. I mean, by comparing your experience to like other experiences that you have, it's just all part of this process. You don't necessarily know what's going to happen and how you're going to cope with things until it happens. What you were saying earlier about how recognizing that things happened in the past and being able to learn from it and not dwell on what has already happened, that's huge.
That song was really just like the tipping point. It made me realize so much. It was the beginning of who I am, pretty much.
That's insane.
And it's crazy that you're like, oh my god, this is exactly what happens in this song. A small ride to the grocery store, and then, yeah.
I really appreciate you putting that down because I know this is an episode about you, but I do want to mention that one thing that I like to do is suggest music to people and like go outside your comfort zone, things that they could relate to or pertain to them or something that I think is good that people could listen to. Like, it's incredible that I've been able to like spark that change in your life in some aspect, or at least be a part of that influence. I mean, I wouldn't say that I am responsible for any of it other than just telling you to listen to a song. I'm really grateful that you've learned so much. You're continuing to hold on to that lesson with everything else that you do.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm really listening to music. Before Come Together, it wasn't something that I was actively doing. I remember the first time that I recommended you a song. You had already heard it before. I didn't write this down or anything, but it's Twilight Zone by Golden Earring.
Oh, that's a great song. Every time I listen to it, I'm reminded of you because I think it was one of those songs that you would hear, but like you wouldn't know the name of until somebody told you. So no, that is a good example of a song that you did tell me that I just love the song.
Yeah, I remember being so proud when I finally recommended you a song. It was amazing.
That's so cool. Music's incredible. I'm really happy that Separate Ways helped you in a way that it did.
So influential.
Yeah.
It's crazy that 3 minutes can have such a big impact.
Before we end our episode, I'd like to give everybody a chance to say whatever they think is important for people to know. What do you want to tell the audience?
Well, I feel like this was kind of the overall theme, but like the past isn't completely set in stone even though it already happened. There's so many things that you don't realize that happened. So many things that like you believe are true that you just need to look at them again. And once you realize something different, you can change so much of the path that you're going to be going on. The past is just as fluid as the future. Oh, and also, again, The Wall is the best Pink Floyd album. Very important.
Thanks, Jake. I appreciate you taking your time to come on our show and share your perspective of how music's influenced you.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. Thank you.
Well, to wherever you are, I wish you happiness and good health. We will see you next episode.